Welcome to episode 2 of ChoralEd. I'm your host, Micah Bland. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Today's episode is all about things we can do to optimize the learning environment, and as a result, limit or prevent problems and misbehavior from occurring in the classroom. So let's jump right in. The first thing to consider is using risers or chairs. Both have advantages and disadvantages, and actually the advantages of one are the disadvantages of the other. So chairs and their advantages. Chairs can provide students with a designated spot, right? This might be helpful for students who like to wander around the room, or when we look at the disadvantages of risers, students like to elbow push each other because they're in closer proximity. They might hit each other in the head with a folder. Pretty common if you've ever worked in middle school. These are things that you might have to deal with. So if these are your challenges, chairs might be a better option because they provide a designated spot a little further apart from each other, typically, depending on the size of your room and how many students you have. The disadvantages of chairs, however, is this issue of posture. When we stand, and these are the advantages then of risers, we often stand with better posture, and I've found that students sing with a little more energy and effort when they're standing. Of course, the disadvantages with chairs, I like to lean back, slouch over, put the feet up, right? These are problems of posture, and I have chairs behind me here in this class. You know, I would prefer to stand, but my choir rehearses for about an hour and a half, 3 days a week at this university here. And so it is more of a challenge in that way. I have no problem having them stand and sit, but the other challenge there being when you ask students to stand or sit again, you might be met with opposition or complaining, oh, do we have to? I don't want to. And I do see that at the college level as well occasionally, but that was more prevalent at the middle school and high school level when you ask them to stand or sit. So as you can see, those advantages and disadvantages kind of are opposite of each other. And so you might be limited because if you have built-in risers, you have limited option, or if you have chairs already or you don't even have risers. We don't even have risers in this building. They're over in the auditorium. So you might not have a choice. And so do the best you can with what you have, right? Also talking about risers and chairs and the environment that you're in, ideally, they are placed with the student's back to a door or window. This is because if the door or window is behind a teacher, anyone entering the room is an immediate distraction for those students. Or perhaps your window is in a location where there's a lot of people walking by. This is, again, another distraction for our students who would like to pay attention to them instead of what we're doing in the class. When you have it to their back, and that's the ideal location, but of course that might not always be possible, to the side is also acceptable, but it's not optimal, of course. Students would have to turn behind them to look, and when they do that, they don't usually look very long. They glance, and then they turn back to face forward, because they know I'm going to call them out, say, all right, I need you to focus back in, right, if I catch them turning around a lot. Let's move on now to folders and folio cabinets. Imagine with me for a moment that you're at the end of class, you're rehearsing, and then all of a sudden the bell rings. All right, have a great day, see you later. They rush off the risers, and they are pushing and shoving, trying to put their folders into the folio cabinet. The folders get bent, they get shoved in there. They just throw them on top of the folder cabinet. As you can see, this is an issue, and you might have experienced this before. So here are some suggestions to limit this. Number one is I would suggest ending class about 30 seconds to a minute early. Now, I am a proponent of teaching bell to bell, that we use the entire class time, but within that, ending slightly early so students can have a chance to gather their things and put their folder up in a more relaxed manner. You might also be able to then release by row if you have a large class, and this helps with that even more. I would also suggest not placing more than 15 to 20 folders within a class in the same folder cabinet. So meaning you have multiple folio cabinets that are spaced out and only 15 to 20 per class in that folder cabinet. This prevents that bunching up in front of one folder cabinet. Now, I understand having them all in one location is nice in one folder cabinet. However, spacing them out alleviates that issue. If you have a smaller class, it's not much of an issue. The larger your class, the more folder cabinets you need that are spaced out. Talking also about folders, I would strongly encourage you to use 3-ring binders or those folders with the elastic straps, something that securely holds the music in there. If it's just pockets, inevitably the folder is going to be tipped down and all the music is going to go falling out, right? And it's also more likely that music goes missing throughout the school year. So we want to prevent that as much as we can by having it secured in the folder. I'd also would number each folder and assign that number to a student, and also number all the music so you can ensure it is all returned to you at the end of the semester, as well as that all the music is accounted for, if the music is lost, it's left out, you know exactly who it belongs to and can return that music. Our students are forgetful, right? And so we need to have that ability to know, okay, this belongs to this student. I want to talk a little bit also about the location of a teacher's desk. A lot of teachers like to place their desk in a corner against the wall with them looking at the wall if they're working on their computer. This is a problem, however, if we need to go do attendance, work on our computer to project something on the screen, and we're looking at the wall and not at the students. So we need to maintain visual contact with the students as often as possible. Now, of course, laptops have helped with this a lot, that we can be maneuverable throughout the room and still maintain contact with those students. But along those same lines, when someone enters your room, it's great practice to immediately greet them, go, "Oh, so nice to see you." And that develops that rapport with that student, parent, faculty, whoever it may be, right? And so having your desk facing out towards the classroom is helpful. The one drawback to this is that it's not as aesthetically pleasing, or it can limit some space in your office, if you're blessed to have an office, right? And also, you might have some cables running down the front of your desk, which doesn't look that pleasant. However, this can easily be alleviated by having a bookcase there or something else that kind of covers up those cables, or running them off to the side as best you can. Let's also talk now about pencils. There are 2 options that I like to use for pencils, and both work well. I think one is better than the other, but again, it's about your choice and what you identify. We'll talk about your teacher identity in episode 1, and so it's all about your preference and what works best for your students. So one option is to have a box of pencils on the piano nearby that students can grab, use, and put back. The problem, of course, being, and some of you might chuckle when I say put back, because inevitably those pencils go missing. And so you'll have to replace them over 2-3 months. If you're fine with replacing pencils constantly, it works, right? It's a great method. The other challenge here being students don't always remember to get a pencil before class, and so then they're interrupting class to go pick up a pencil, leaving the risers, whatever it may be, or raising their hand and disrupting class. I like to minimize those disruptions as best I can. The alternative is to use these pencil holders as you see in the image here. They have a 3-ring binding, and so they can go into a folder easily. And they also are zipped up, so those pencils don't just fall out. So if they just put them in a pocket, again, the pencil just doesn't fall out and go missing. So it's always there. You can put other things in that pocket holder, including erasers. If you use the straw technique, you can put that in there. Other items that you might use for class. There are 2 options for how you acquire these. It can either be an item required for choir that students have to bring, and so it's their belonging, they own it. That's an option. Or you can purchase an entire choir set, so maybe 100 if you have 100 in your choir, and they'll last good 10, 15 years. They'll last a long time. And they are provided to the student with the folder and the music, and they must return it at the end of the semester or pay a fee for it being lost or stolen, whatever may happen, right? And so it works very well that they just unzip it, take out the pencil, use it, put it back in, zip it back up. Very easy, right? And I see this work very well with pencil use and students always having a pencil handy. The last thing I want to talk about here is cell phones. And over the past decade or so, cell phones have become a serious problem in the classroom because students are constantly getting notifications and they want to constantly look at their phone. They are very attached to their phone. We are too as adults as well. And the issue here being that when students are either using their phone or have it near them in their pocket, they are equally distracted, right? If I'm using my phone, it's equally distracting if it's in my pocket. Now, you might find that surprising. Well, why is that? Imagine you get a buzz. Your phone vibrates. Oh, I got a message. You're in a meeting. You're in that faculty meeting that no one ever really fully enjoys typically, right? Sometimes. Hopefully you enjoy them, right? But sometimes they're not the most interesting things for music-related activities. You are immediately distracted from what's happening because you go, oh, I wonder who that text is from, or oh, I got a new notification. Maybe it's a new follower on Instagram. Our students have the same issue, and the more it buzzes, the more you want to look at your phone. So inevitably, you take out your phone and go, oh, and you want to look at it, respond. Students do the same thing. And so in order to limit and prevent that challenge and that distractedness is to have the phones away from the students. So how do we do this? I suggest, as you see in the image here, one of these plastic shoe holders. Now, of course, I say one of them. You might need multiple. You'll need as many slots as you have students in your largest class. So let's say your largest class has 50. You'll need 50 slots. You will number each of these slots, assign that student a number. Usually it's related to their folder number. And this is also a way to take attendance. And so they place their phone in that slot. If they don't have a phone or claim they don't have a phone, we had index cards that they could place in there that said no phone. I say we, and so this comes from my time teaching high school with two other directors. And in our experience, the first year I was there, we had a horrible time with cell phones. I probably, at minimum, caught one student a day using their cell phone. I think my record was 5 or 7 in one day. It was a major problem, and most of the time it was 2 a day, probably, honestly. It's a major issue and a major problem for some schools. Some schools might have a great protocol in place for dealing with cell phones, which can work very well. The school I was at did not, and it was a constant problem. So the second year I was there, we implemented this shoe holder thing, a shoe holder approach, and it worked very well. Now, there are some challenges, and you might be thinking to yourself, oh, I don't know about this, stolen phones and so forth. The first challenge, of course, is being that separation anxiety from their phone. This is why we used clear plastic shoe holders, and then the phones were placed at the front of the class, so within view of the students, kind of behind and to the side of the teacher. And so students could always see my phone is still there, it's safe, it's not missing, it's not stolen. That alleviates a lot of the concern of students, right? That separation anxiety. And that first week or two that we implemented this, the next year, the second year I was at that high school, we were met with a lot of opposition, but within those first 2 weeks, all the concerns were alleviated, right? The other big concern being a phone being stolen. And so we made it very clear at the beginning of each semester, we don't take someone else's phone. We don't jokingly take someone else's phone. If we do, and someone says, my phone is missing, no one leaves the room. We'll call down the administrators. We'll call down the campus police officers if we need to, and we'll stay in that room until that phone is found and recovered. We never had a major issue. There was one minor issue where someone forgot about this and they jokingly took someone else's phone. Of course, after being scolded, right then, it didn't happen again. So making it very clear to students at the beginning of the year helps a lot. This is also a reason why you might want to end 30 seconds to a minute early so that students have time to gather their phone, put their folder up, and you can make sure that everyone has their phone. It's also a great time, some things they often forget, to take the index card out. You have to do that, make sure that it's all clear for the next class, because they'll use the same slots. And if you use it for attendance, then that can be an issue, right? You can count somebody present when they're not actually there. And so we'd have to go, all right, number 4 or 5, make sure you go get your index card and take it out. And they have to go over and take it out, right? Great approach to end a little early, because that really kind of helps conclude class in a more peaceful, calm manner. Again, cell phones are a challenge. This is a great option for you. Again, there are some hesitations, I understand. And the teachers I worked with, we discussed this at length, but we decided this was a great approach. And if we made it very clear about our expectations and the rules, so then again, students that did use their phone during class, there was an automatic consequence, because now they're off task, they're lying because they put an index card saying that they didn't have a phone, they're not following directions, and they had an automatic detention, right? So this worked great for us. Again, it might not work for you, but this is all based on your school, your students, and your personal approach to teaching. Over the next week or so, I hope you would take a moment to look at your classroom and consider the environment that you have established, and maybe making some possible changes based on what you heard today. But until next time, thanks for watching, and I hope you continue to inspire the future leaders of our world through this wonderful gift we call music. Thanks.